We're going to talk about Parshas Pinchas. Pinchas. So last week I had put out a question. The question was because last week was a double parsha. We had the parsha of Hukat followed by Balak, and we explored that. But I had said that it would make more sense from a story continuity perspective that we should have had Balak and Pinchas, okay? Because the story of Balak, he's going to curse the Jews, and Bilam is going to curse the Jews, and at the end he finds a way. He convinces the Moabites and the Midian how to do it, and which is basically that they took the Midianite women, the princesses. I mean, even the right, and they enticed the Jewish men to have illicit relations. And at the end of the parsha, the people are dying. There's a plague that hits Bnei Yisrael, and Pinchas, who is the son of Eleazar the Kohen, he becomes zealous for Hashem, and he takes a spear, and he eliminates the prince of the tribe of Shimon, who was Zimri, and the princess of Midian, who was Cosbi. And with one thrust, he gets them both, and the plague stops. This week, Pinchas continues the story, and so it would seem to be logical. However, and last week we drew some connections. One of the reasons, though, that we read Pinchas now is Pinchas is generally read, almost always, during the time of the 3 weeks. So we know the 3 weeks start at the 17th of Tammuz, which is this year is this Thursday, and it goes for 3 weeks, ending with Tisha B'Av, the 9th day of Av, which is the epitome, and it lingers into the 10th of Av. Okay, and it's a period of national mourning for Bnei Yisrael. So, and what are we mourning? There's a number of things we're mourning for. It started with back in Parshat Shalach, where the Meraglim, the spies, went into Eretz Yisrael, and they came back with Lashon Hara and a bad report and so on. And if you want to hear more detail on that, go back and look for the video on YouTube that we did, and we talked about it. We have some nice things there. But one of the things that was said is Hashem said that this was going to be a time of mourning. Basically, so both of the Beit HaMikdashes were destroyed on the 9th of Av. And they were destroyed for 2 reasons. One was idol worship, was one. And the other was baseless hatred. Okay? Now, we're going to attempt to tie all this into Pinchas now. So the parsha of Pinchas starts with a description of Pinchas, and basically it says Hashem spoke to Moshe, and he said, Pinchas, the son of Eleazar, who is the son of Aaron the Kohen, he turned back my anger from Bnei Yisrael when he zealously avenged my vengeance among them, so that I didn't destroy the children of Israel. Okay, and because of that, what happens? Hashem says, listen, he says, I want you to hear that 2 things in the Hebrew. Just the second pasuk here, it says, Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen Heshiv et Chamita me'al b'nei Yisrael v'kan'o et kin'ati betocham v'lo hiliti et b'nei Yisrael bekin'ati. This word bekin'ati or kinat is the vengeance or avenging. It's 3 times repeated here. So we're going to hear the Or Chaim has a comment on that. Then the next line, and this is again, the Or Chaim is going to comment. He says, Lechein emer hineni noten lo et briti shalom. He says, therefore, this is immediately following. Shem says, therefore, say to Pinchas, listen, I'm going to give him my covenant of shalom, of peace. And that became the covenant that Pinchas was going to become a Kohen. Now, you say, wait a minute, we just said Pinchas was the son of Eleazar, who was the Kohen, who was the son of Aaron, who was a Kohen. So we know that all of this passes, this lineage passes father to son. It should be that Pinchas was already a Kohen. But hopefully most of us know that what happened was Pinchas was born before Aaron became a Kohen. And the thing was that Aaron and his children and their children who will be born after this decree, after this awarding of the kahuna of being a Kohen, will become Kohanim. But Pinchas, he was the eldest son of Eleazar, he had already been born. So therefore, he wasn't included in it because he wasn't, even though he wasn't a son of Aaron, he's a grandson of Aaron. And B, it was the children that would be born afterwards that would that would become Kohanim. He had already been born, so he's not a Kohen. He's a regular Levi, you know? Pinchas. Pinchas was a regular Levi. Okay, now let's talk about what happened. We have that. What did Pinchas actually do? So I mentioned that Pinchas went in there and he speared the Zimri and Cosby. But let's talk about the actual story. This is like right out of a Hollywood movie. You know what happens. Here we have Bnei Israel. They had no idea what was happening with Balak and Bilam, which we talked about from last week's parsha. No idea what was going on. Bilam trying to curse him, and Hashem intervening and saying to Bilam, you know what? You can't curse him. You got to give a bracha instead. And there's beautiful brachot and everything. Bilam, who was in it for himself, he says, Balak, who was the king of the Moabite, he says, I'm done with you. Get out of here. I wasted my money. And he says, listen, I'm going to give you a freebie. Here's the freebie. Entice the Jewish men with your daughters. They're going to sleep with them. They're going to have relations. But before they do that, get them to worship your idol. The idol was named Baal Peor. And the type of worship they did was particularly disgusting. They had to, I'm sorry, there's no nice way to put it. I know some of us are eating, but they had to defecate before the idol, and then they were able to have relations. Interestingly, peor in Spanish, peo, is, means something, it's an unattractive smell. So there's interesting things there. We're gonna hear one other one. So, and the Jewish men did it, and a big plague hit. So Pinchas sees what's going on. Everybody else froze. And what happens is the prince of the tribe of Shimon, right? His name was Zimri. And he grabs the princess, Balak's daughter, the princess of Midian. Her name was Cosby. And he publicly takes her in front of everybody into a tent, and he starts doing what he's, doing things.
Like a certain Cosby.
Exactly. That was the other relationship. Like another Cosby that we heard in the news here in America, a number of years ago. He also did things that were not so nice. And coincidentally, by the way, he was arrested for all of this in Parshat Pinchas.
Oh, really?
Yes.
No way.
Yes. Way. Yeah. So just one of those interesting things. Okay. Now, so Pinchas, he sees what's going on. He says, nobody else is standing up. And he says, what do we do? So he says, I'm going to act. I'm going to act on this, and I'm going to take care of things. And so what does he do? He grabs a spear. Now, you got to imagine that he's going into the camp of Shimon. Shimonites are there. And their prince is in there, and these guys are proving. So you don't just walk into the spear. I'm going to kill your prince. It's very tough. So Mayim Lahaz brings in 12 miracles that happened for Pinchas in order for all of this to take place. Now, before we get to those 12 miracles, what did he do? He took a spear. A spear is usually a long shaft with a sharp blade on the end. So he disconnected the blade from the spear, put the blade in his coat pocket, and he takes his spear and he's using the spear like a walking stick as he's going into the camp of the Shimonites. Okay? And they think, okay, he's there. And he tells them, listen, I want to go see Zimri, And, maybe he's going to go with the woman. He fools them all thinking that what? He fools them all thinking that Pinchas is going to go and find a girl for himself. And he goes into the tent where Zimri and Cosby were, and he connects the spear, and shish kebab, boom, right in the middle of them doing what they're not supposed to be doing. He spears them right through their lower halves. Okay, as they were entwined, now they're entwined on the spear. So there were 12 miracles that happened. What happened? He says that when they saw Pinchas walk in with the spear, they stayed in that position. They didn't jump. They didn't do anything. Okay, that's one miracle. 2, they were speechless. They didn't even call out. You imagine they're in the camp of the Shimonites, and here comes a guy in with a spear that he's going to kill him. They didn't scream nothing, because if they had done that, everybody else would come, what are you doing? Third thing says that even as the spear went through them, they stayed together. Mm-hmm. They stayed together. Crazy. Fourth, he says that when they ran them through, the spear didn't break. Fifth, when he took them outside, he was able to lift them up on the spear together. Wow. They didn't slide down. The tent lifted up so he could walk out of the entrance of the tent with them like displayed like this. Okay? And they didn't slip off. Number 6, Hashem gave him the strength to actually do this. Lift up 2 bodies, right, while they were in that way, and carry them like 3 kilometers. Carry them a fair amount of space, right? And then what he did, he says he twirled them around to show all the people, particularly their relatives, look what happens. He says then the metal part of the spear, which should have broken, it didn't break from the weight. It stayed. The 10th thing was that the normal way of them doing the act was that the woman was laying down and the man, they stayed that way even on the spear somehow. The 11th he brings is that they stayed alive on the spear, right? As Pinchas paraded them throughout the entire camp of the Jews. Why? Because if they were dead, they would cause tumah for a coin. And Pinchas was going to be a coin, right? Wow. So no, right? And the last one he brings is that the blood congealed and it didn't drip down. Okay? So pretty wild. And there's this plague of 24,000 people that had died, and the plague stops. Pretty amazing, right? That's like right out of one of these sci-fi movies that you might see, You can imagine, I don't know who playing the lead of Pinchas, some big actor, and whatever. So pretty amazing stuff.
Rabbi, did he know this was going to happen?
Pinchas?
Like in the exact way, like.
No, Pinchas just went, and that's going to be part of the point. The question is, did Pinchas know any of this is going to happen? Pinchas just acted out of pure zealousness. Now, we have to explore a little bit what is a zealot, okay? So a zealot is not what we think a zealot should be. A lot of times when we look at a zealot, we think this is somebody that is uh, going to go really strongly, in this case, to avenge something because they have an agenda. I have an agenda. That wasn't it. A real zealot, where the Torah is talking about Pinchas, is somebody that is so focused on doing what's right for Hashem that they themselves almost cease to exist. In other words, they're there physically, they're there spiritually, but their own desires are diminished, and it's only to do what's the desire and what's right for a Kodesh Baruch Hu. That was Pinchas. Now, the next thing that happens, oh, by the way, he comes out. The Maim Laz doesn't bring this down, but think about it. He's walking like 3 kilometers with these guys, the Shish Kebab twins, and he's walking out here. Nobody stops him. And in fact, they're watching this, they're stunned, and the plague stops, and people are talking like, oh, what'd you have to do that for? Oh, this is like a genocide. This is why, it's like you don't have to look too far from today's headlines to realize what's up is down and down is up sometimes, I mean, it's not, just look what is in the headlines today. There's a Jewish a guy in San Francisco who's running for Congress, and he's gay, and they kicked him out of the gay pride thing because he's Jewish, and they bring him in as that he's supporting Israel. So according to them, he's supporting genocide. Meanwhile, the ironic thing is these people have flags that have the gay pride flag and the Palestinian flag combined on one flag. and you realize, if you're gay and you go to the Palestinian areas, you're not going to be there very long. Maybe your body will, but you're not going to be alive very long. That's reality. And that's the craziest. And you think about it here. This is the same thing. He's coming out. And they're, instead of saying, wow, you stopped the plague. Wow. No, what are you doing? You're a murderer, and all this stuff, right? What chutzpah these guys have, okay? And they criticize him. They should have been cheering for him. But this is the self-centeredness of things. There's a story that happens, it's a story as an aside. It's a funny story. Happens on Yom Kippur. And they're getting up to the end of Yom Kippur. The last prayer is Nilah, and the Aron HaKodesh is open, and people are crying, forgive me, you're beating everything. And the rabbi gets up, and he says, oh my God, nothing, Hashem, forgive me, I'm nothing. He's crying. The president of the shul had been sitting next to him. Sorry. He gets up next to the rabbi. I'm nothing, Hashem, forgive me. Oh, he's beating his chest and the tears are flowing. Some, the simple Jew, he gets up. He says, Hashem, forgive me. I'm nothing. And the president turns to the rabbi. He says, look who thinks he's nothing. The point is, sometimes we're acting out of our own ego. I want to show off who I am, and what I can do, and so on, because I have my own interests. And that's what the people here, they had their own interests. Hey, what are you doing? You're stopping this stuff. Okay. So they had their own personal agenda. They wanted to be with these women. So 24,000. Interestingly, the plague that hit the students of Rabbi Akiva also killed 24,000. Okay. All right. So, as we said, they wanted to be right for themselves and not for Hashem. They wanted to do their own thing. Now, with this, he gets the covenant of Pinchas. He gets the covenant to become a Kohen, and his children after him. So, there's a couple of very interesting things with this, and I want to point it out, and I think you'll find it fascinating. So the Korach Chaim, he brings. We said this this pasuk, right? That says Lechem Emor. Says therefore, right? Say I'm going to give him my covenant of peace. So he says the Korach Chaim brings up is why do we have to have this word Lechem? Therefore, right? And furthermore, he asks why when they described it, Pinchas stopped things. It's like there was a plague. He stopped it, and I'm going to give Pinchas, and he stopped things. It's out of order. He says the reason. He gives a whole long explanation, which I'm going to spare us right now. It's fascinating, but I know the time is creeping on us. But needless to say, he says that it was a whole formula of how Hashem did this to make sure that everybody knew that Pinchas acted correctly. He acted the right way. And the Baal HaTurim brings up something interesting. The Baal HaTurim says like this. The Baal HaTurim loves gematrias and things like that. And he says, first off, Pinchas became Eliyahu Hanavi. Pinchas became Eliyahu Hanavi. Pinchas never really died. He transformed into Eliyahu. So he says, how do we know this? He says, there's a number of ways. The Korach Chaim talks about it as well. But he brings like this. He says that we have to first look at this sentence. He says what? He says L'chein emor kineni noten lo et briti shalom. I give him my covenant of peace. The word peace in Hebrew is shalom. How is shalom spelled? Shin, lamed, vav, mem, sofi. Right? But if you take a look at this, this is shalom. This is shalom in the Torah. You notice something about the vav right here? There's a line through it. And we read the Torah this morning. I double checked it and looked at it in the Torah. The vav is written not complete this way. I never see this. You never see this in the commentaries. This is why. So Baal HaTurim brings a beautiful thing. He says, if it was Shin Lamed Yud, so half of Vav is a Yud, then it's Shalem. Gave him not only the covenant of peace, but a covenant of completeness. He was a complete person. In other words, all his desires were subjugated to the will of Hashem. It's huge. This is why he could do what he did. Because everything that he wanted was always for the will of Hashem. And that's it. Now, how do we know it became Eliyahu? This is because this incomplete Vav, right? In Hebrew, we would say Chaser Vav. Chaser, basically that incomplete Vav. So we have it spelled Chet Samech Resh Vav Yud Vav. The gematria of this is 290. Okay, we know gematria is. Then the Baal HaTurim brings this amazing. He says Hishalem. Why? Ki Pinchas Eliyahu. Because Pinchas is Eliyahu, which has the same gematria of 290. And I double checked it. It's 290. Amazing. So in other words, this broken love in Shalom brings it that according to the Baal HaTurim that this is our proof that Pinchas became Eliyahu. It's amazing stuff. Now,
did his appearance remain the same? What do
you mean? Oh, I don't know. If he physically looks the same, I don't know. That's a good question. Now, we're going to put that to the side. So there is Pinchas. Everything was for the sake of Hashem. Everything, right? Now we have Korach. I'm going to bring up Korach. Korach is old news. Korach was 2 weeks ago. What's going on? Because Korach's in this week's parasha. This week's parasha, if we fast forward just a little bit until we're done talking about Pinchas, okay? And we're talking about because of the plague, there's we have to count the Shem commands we count the Jews, right? And it says something very, very interesting as we're counting the Jews, we're counting Ruvain. And right after Ruvain, it talks about Korach, right? Because it talks about the sons of Eliab, who are Nemuel and Dathan and Abriam, the same Dathan and Abriam that Moshe called over, and they were the ones that incited Korach. And the Orach Chaim brings a beautiful proof that they were really the instigators, not Korach. Korach was the mouthpiece. Korach had he was the Levi. He had the ability to do it. But who put the original thought into Korach? That is Datan and Abriam. Right? So he brings here, he says, Saint Datan and Abriam, they contended with Moshe and Aaron and all of Korach. And he says, the Torah says the earth opened its mouth. We know this from Korach. It opened it up and it swallowed them, the entire the congregation, 200 that were with them, 250 men, and including the children of Korach. And then the Torah says what? It says, Uvnei Korach lo metu. And the children of Korach did not die. Wait a minute. They dropped into this hole that opens up in the desert, and everybody else dies. They didn't die. And we said that there was a story in the Gemara of this old man that called over, I can't remember which rabbi, he said, I'll show you where Korach is. And they go there and they hear every Rosh Chodesh, right? Moshe is a met, the Torah is a met, and we were wrong, right? Korach, right? So he says, how could the children not die? What does this mean? So Rashi comments, and it's brought up that as the earth opened up, that a ledge appeared, and the children of Korach, his sons, ended up on this ledge, and everybody else fell down to the deep end, and they died, and the sons stayed there. So in other words, the sons had some redeeming quality. And believe it or not, the Orach Chaim brings, so did Korach. He had some redeeming quality. And in fact, we see that if you look at Tehillim, right? Enrique, you were talking about Tehillim earlier, right? That there are some chapters in Tehillim that say what they say. The songs of praise to Hashem from who? From Korach, from the children of Korach. And if you look particularly, he brings here, it's Tehillim 45 through 49, 84 through 85, and 87 through 88. Brings it, okay? So they had some level of redeeming quality. There's another explanation that says that they're still alive. The other explanation is this. It's not that they're physically alive, but what they stood for is still alive. They stood for machlochet. They stood for what's in it for me. You know, when we talked about Parashat Korach, I mentioned I'm a Levi, and I had to learn to say that, you know what, if I don't get a Levi Aliyah, it's okay. Why? Because Hashem needs a Levi, he doesn't need me. He needs somebody to be a Levi. That's it. Okay, so it's not me, it's somebody else. Same with a Kohen. Somebody needs to be a Kohen. It can be this Kohen, but that's what he needs. And so that's the thing, is a Korach, that spirit of Korach is no, it has to be me. It has to be me. The spirit of Pinchas is no. It has to be what's right for Hashem. It has to be what's needed for Hashem. Okay? Now, I started out by talking about the 3 weeks coming up, and the Tisha B'Av and the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. So we said that one was destroyed for idol worship. What happens in this parsha? We're talking about why we read Pinchas in the 3 weeks. Idol worship. What was the other? Needless hatred. What was needless hatred? Korach. Korach was needless hatred. I hate you, Moshe. I hate all this, because I want it, not you. Those are the two things. So the question is, what do we do? Before I get to that, I want to say one more thing about Pinchas, very short. That we said that Pinchas became Eliyahu and Hanavidi never died. He was also the great grandfather of Mattiyasu, who was the hero of Hanukkah. Okay, so there's a long lineage there. And the other thing I wanted to say about Pinchas is this: if you look at the background of Pinchas, for a guy to go and do this, take the spear and do all of these things, you think this is a guy that is, he's been working out, and he's good with the weapons and things like that. That's what, if you ever, I'm not advising anybody to see a movie, but, I know these superhero movies that they go in, the guy's, former Navy SEAL, and, this is what you think this is Pinchas was like. It was like, Pinchas was the yeshiva bocher. He learned. That's what he did. Imagine, the typical yeshiva bocher today, guy with, to be just for a stereotype, he's big glasses or whatever, hey, he's in there learning all day. That was Pinchas. What does he do? He becomes a ninja like this, became the ninja like this. So that's it. I'm going to do what I got to do. So now from this, we're going to see something. We're supposed to mourn over the Beit HaMikdash, the destruction of all of them. And that's one reason why we have the 3 weeks now, is a starting of our mourning period. And the Gemara brings, by the way, says whoever mourns properly over the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, this is a Gemara in Tanit, whoever mourns properly will merit to see the Beit HaMikdash rebuilt. It's a pretty heavy statement. Whether it's us, our children, our children's children, right? So how do we mourn? So we go through the motions. We fast 17th of Tammuz. We fast 9th of Av. 9th of Av, we don't wear leather shoes, right? We were separated from our spouses. We don't apply lotion. There's a number of things like that to show our mourning. Some people sleep on the floor, sleep in a less comfortable position, all these things together. We sit on low stools, at night and in the morning, just like a mourner does. And, God forbid anybody should lose a close relative. But, unfortunately, I've lost both my parents. I've gone through it, and it's a very tough time. And when you're mourning for a parent, what is the thing that you really want? Somehow to bring them back. I can tell you that from my own experience. You're mourning and you know the reality, but you say, if there was something I can do to bring them back, boy, would I do it. Tell me, I got to give all my money to tzedakah and they'll come back? Done. It's not even no thought, right? But you know that's not how the world works. However, when it comes to mourning for the Beit HaMikdash, we mourn like a parent. We mourn with that fervor. We can bring it back. That's the difference. We have the power. We have the ability to say, you know what? We can bring it back. How do we bring it back? Choice is, do you become like Korach? Yeah, I'm observant. I'm Jewish. Do you become like Pinchas? I'm observant, but I do it all for the will of Hashem. I want to share one quick story. And I'm not going to say who it is because I don't want to embarrass the person. But as you know, one of the things that I do is I've been blessed, not by any design that I ever came up with, but I've been blessed. Hashem put me in a position where I teach people that are desirous of being Jewish to become Jewish. I teach them, what to do. And I go to the Beit Din in order to convert. For anybody that doesn't know, is watching this at home. In order to convert, you have to go to a Beit Din. And you go through a Beit Din. There's different Beit Dins, whatever. The Beit Din makes things tough on purpose. You have to really desire to be Jewish. You have to prove yourself. It's not like getting a driver's license. Everybody's entitled to it. You have to earn it, you know. And so, this one particular family went, I think, for the first time about 5 years ago to the Beit Din, and they met with them and everything else like that. We started learning. We learned for about 3 years. They uprooted their lives. They lived not in a Jewish neighborhood. They lived downtown Miami. They uprooted their lives, moved to a Jewish community, went back to the Beit Din. Okay, you're almost ready. Went back to the Beit Din a third time. Beit Din asked some questions. The Beit Din felt they weren't quite ready. Okay. Now we're into year 5. They go back to the Beit Din. And there was one hiccup. Beit Din says, I think you're ready, but you need to do one other thing. You need to enroll your child in a Jewish school. And, they were homeschooling. It wasn't that the child was in a, bad environment. It's a good environment. No, this is our requirement. The next day, there was no thought. I mean, this is on a Sunday. The next day, Monday morning, their child was enrolled in a Jewish school, 100%. Beit Din said, come back in a few months. Came back, went back last night. My wife and I went with them. The Beit Din said, asked a couple questions, and Beit Din said, you're in, you're going. And I've known in this family for 6 years. And the one thing is that every time that the Beit Din said, you need to come back, you need to come back. Yes, of course they were sad. But the attitude was, whatever it is for Hashem. Okay, Hashem's now saying, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. We're going to work hard. We're going to keep going. We're going to keep going. I never saw this family without a smile on the husband's face or the wife's face or anything else like that. They persevered. They went through it because they said, you know what, our attitude is exactly whatever Hashem needs, that's what we need. And that's what the Bat Yayin brings up with all of this. So you want to be like Pinchas, you have to take your desires and they become totally secondary. It's the desires of Hashem that matter. So in this period of time, we want to bring the Beit HaMikdash back. We have to be we cannot be like Korach. We have to be like Pinchas. We have to become a ninja for Hashem, a ninja for the Torah, no matter what our background is. And B'Shad Tova, B'Mehera V'Yamenu, we're going to see Mashiach ushered in by Eliyahu Hanavi, Pinchas, in our time, the third Beit HaMikdash. B'Mehera V'Yamenu, Ken Yiratzon, Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen V'Amen. Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you. Guys, thank you so much.